Now isn't that beautiful? Welcome to Cerknica Lake in winter. Yes, that's right. I'm at Cerknica Lake. Now, it's actually frozen, not all of it. A good part of it is frozen, especially over there. This little section here isn't, and I've actually stopped here for a reason, because as you can see, that mountain over there is nicely reflected in the water where it's not frozen, but the area behind is frozen, and the area to the left of it is frozen, and there's a nice little lead-in line. So I've positioned myself here, right here, where I've got the reflection of that snowy peak of the mountain, or small bit of mountain really, right in the middle there where the water is. So I've got a nice perfect reflection of the mountain itself with the ice to the right and to the back of it too. So it's a lovely composition. So I'll show you what I'm going to do now. So in order to get the shot I wanted, I actually needed to get up a bit higher, because as you can see there, there's some reeds right down in the foreground, and the tops of those reeds, I wanted to get separation between the tops of the reeds and the reflection of the mountain itself. And in order to do that, I needed to get up higher. And thankfully there's a nice pile of snow there, so I was actually able to set up my tripod on that pile of snow, and that gave me just the right amount of height I needed to get the clearance between the top of the reeds and the bottom of the reflection of the mountain itself. So I'll show you the picture I've just taken now as an example. So I've got the case canine filter holder on here, and on the front of that I've got the case magnetic polarizer. Now this is really great, because that also means that with the polarizer on, I don't need it right now for this shot, but later if I need to put a grad on, I can just slot the grad in on the top and the polarizer sits behind. And the polarizer has been quite useful to control the reflections on the water and the glare also on the reeds down here, so to give a bit more contrast. I'll show you now. Well, that was magnificent, wasn't it? Isn't it a beautiful mountain? The mountain is actually called Cerknica. Now, if you're not familiar with Cerknica Lake, Cerknica is actually the largest of the seasonal lakes in this area. Now, this region of Slovenia is called the karst region, and they're so-called seasonal lakes because this area is limestone, so it's all porous. And while the lakes fill up, these areas fill up with water in the winter typically, or autumn, when there's after lots and lots of rainfall. After a long period of no rain, the water drains away through sinkholes. So typically, usually in the summer especially, all of this is completely dry. There's no water whatsoever. So the lakes are only full in the seasons, typically winter, autumn, maybe into spring, depending on the rain or how much rain there is. So it's a beautiful place to come, and in the winter, as you can see, it's frozen. Further down there, it's even more frozen, and it's really spectacular place to come. So the best way to get here is to hire a car. I've hired a car. Now I got this car on Discover Cars. I'll put a link to them down below in the description. They actually, out of all the places I searched, they gave me the best deal. So they'll search multiple car rental agencies and give you multiple prices and multiple cars that you can choose from. And one little tip with Discover Cars, I actually purchased their full insurance cover, which actually was cheaper than it would have been at the rental agency, because when I picked up the car I asked them how much it would have been, and their price for the full cover was actually higher than the price they paid through Discover Cars. So little tip for you. Now I'm going to move across to the other side, because there's a bit more ice here, and there's a melted section here with a circular bit, which I think might make a nice interesting foreground composition. It's a bit less snow here, so one of the problems when it's very bright, one of the problems with the LCD screens, they're really, really useful in many ways, but they're really, really useless in bright light. So that's where the old viewfinder really is the best option. And without that, I don't know what I would do. It's not really an ideal composition when I pull wide. It's nice, that foreground area, but with the lack of cloud and detail in the sky, I'm not sure it's going to work. So I think I'm going to go in closer and focus a bit more on this bit of ice in the foreground. This is a bit more of an interesting composition. There's some nice lines in the ice leading you up to the reeds over there in the frozen section in the background. Now I've zoomed in to get rid of the sky, because the sky is quite washed out and pretty much uninteresting actually. So in this case I think it's much better to go in. Now I've zoomed into 100 millimeters. Let's see how that works. That's definitely where I like to use the viewfinder to get a much clearer view of the scene, because when it's bright like this you really can't see clearly, and then you have problems sometimes in the corners. You know, you need to look in the corners of your compositions, because sometimes there might be something there you don't want there to be, or in this case, because the light's coming from the side, there's a good chance that there might be some lens flare, and there actually is. When I look in the corner, right down the very bottom here, there's a little bit of lens flare. So by using the viewfinder and then using my hand, I'll be able to accurately get rid of it. So by sticking your hand over like this, and you can more easily see whether you've effectively got rid of the lens flare or not. Move down to focus, flip the manual to lock that focus in, and then adjust my composition. So I've got the very edge of the reeds in the composition, just at the side, and they're making a nice line down the middle of the composition. And then I've got these nice little lines in the ice, giving a nice little lead-in line, a nice little pattern in the foreground. And then, as I say, I've cut off the sky, and I've just got the forested background in the shot. So this is going to be a nice shot. Now once I've framed it up, now I can turn on my live view and take the shot. One more thing, check the polarization, there you go. So once again, see how the polarizer helps to reduce the glare and really enrich the nice colour of those reeds at the back, and really add some contrast to the scene. It's lovely. I've got everything nicely composed there, and stick my hand over, I can get rid of any lens flare. So let's give that a go. Looks good on the screen at least. Let's see what it looks like on the computer, and I'll stick that up there now for you to see. Now, one of the problems you get when photographing snow and ice is that it can fool the camera's metering system, because it sees that colour, the white colour, as light. And so white obviously is quite bright. And what happens is it fools the camera into believing that there's more light there than there actually is. So if you believe the camera and take the picture, you'll likely end up with an underexposed image. So what you usually have to do is dial up the exposure compensation, maybe plus 1 or 2/3 of a stop, or even 1 stop, depending on how bright the scene is and how much light is available. So the more sun there is, then the more that ice and snow is going to glow, actually, so it'll look much brighter than it actually is. When it's overcast, you don't need quite so much exposure compensation. So when it's very, very bright, so right now I've got about plus 2/3 of a stop, and that seems to be just right. I'm going to try coming down a bit too, because there's a nice little line of ice too just in front. So I'm going to try this composition too. That looks nice. I'll stick them both up there and see which one you think looks best. Now a bit more clouds drifted over, so there's a bit more reflection here. So now when I pull back, it's looking more interesting. I think I'm going to scoot around and see if I can find an interesting composition. I've got a full frame camera here with a 24mm, so I can't really pull back any more than 24mm, unfortunately. One of these days I might get a wider angle lens, but for now very bright up there, so I think I'm going to need a grad, maybe a soft grad, to pull back the brightness from this side. It's too much. Now I need to tone down the polarization a bit, because it's darkening. The one problem when you're shooting wide angle is if you go full polarization, you get uneven darkening in the sky. So it darkens like the edges of the corners of the sky and not the rest. So it doesn't look right. In this case, we need to pull it back. That's better. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please just give this video a like and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, check out my other videos and stay tuned for more videos. Catch you later. Bye bye.